Ryan here. I thought I'd give you guys a quick window into the way I do the Wim Hof breathing. There's many tutorials online and they're pretty much the same. There's just some subtleties and stuff that I've come to learn along the way, and that may differ from person to person, but things that have made it more effective for me. When I do the breathing, I use the app and I find it quite useful. You don't have to use the app. It is free and there's a paid version. I think the paid version, it's not too expensive. I got the paid version because it has some extra features in, but I think the guided breathing is free on the app as far as I know. It looks like this. And then there's a section called breathing exercises. And there you have different settings. You can set how many breaths, deep in and out breaths you take, the speed of the breaths in and out. You can choose if you want Wim Hof's voice to guide you. You can choose if you want music during it or not. If you don't have the app or don't want the app, you can do this without the app. So that's fine. I just find it very useful. It also keeps track of your retention periods, your breath, how many times you've done it a week, etc., which is quite rewarding when you go, okay, cool, I've been pretty consistent. So that is useful. Just a couple things before I show you how I do the breathing is to know that there's 3 parts to the breathing technique. And these 3 parts consist of 1 round. The first part is the deep in and out breaths. Now that is breathing deeply in and out. Those are the deep in and out breaths. So you can do anything from 5 to 45 of those. Then it goes into what we call the retention period. That is then after your last breath of your deep in and out breaths, you go and you breathe out all your air, and then you hold. You don't breathe in. And that is your retention period. Now, that is essentially your breath holding, but you aren't holding breath because you've actually expelled all your breath. That's when your timer starts. And that's actually where you'll be quite surprised how long you can hold without any breath in your lungs. So just to recap, there's a deep in and out breath, final breath out, retention period, that's where the timer starts. And then once you get to a point where like, okay, I've got to inhale, then you take a deep breath in. This is the third part. And you go, and then you hold that for 15 seconds. And then after 15 seconds, breathe out, and that's the end of 1 round. Now what you can do is after that breathe out, immediately go into another round. Next round, into the deep breath. So those are the 3 components. Deep in and out breaths, retention period, deep breath in for 15 seconds. And that constitutes a round. Some pointers that have helped me along the way is I started doing this lying down, and maybe for most people I recommend starting lying down, especially if you feel a little bit dizzy or a little bit faint or pins and needles, because that will happen. Never do this standing up or in water or driving or any other place where you're at risk. So I started lying down, and a lot of people stick with that. I transitioned to sitting up, and the reason for that is I just found it easier to do the breathing, because a very important part of the breathing is to breathe into your stomach and then into your chest and out again. So it's a kind of a circular motion. In through the stomach, into the chest, and out again. So it's almost like you can imagine it moving in you and out you like a circle. So just to demonstrate, stomach, chest, out. Now the reason I chose to do this sitting up is because it makes that circular motion easier. It's almost my body moves with it. When you're lying down, you almost got to lift yourself up physically to get that rotation going. but it's totally possible lying down, and many people prefer it. I just have found over time easier sitting up. Just have some water handy, because your throat can get quite dry. Make sure you hydrate before and afterwards. If you're in cold climate, one thing to do also is to, if you need, put like some moisturizer on your lips, because you've got a lot of dry and often cold air moving across your lips. So that can kind of also make your lips crack a little bit. So that's just something that I kind of figured out along the way as well. In the breath retention phase, I find there's certain things I do that help me retain my breath for longer. Some of the things I do is sometimes I swallow. And so I'm not breathing in air, I just swallow. I'll do that. I'll maybe shift around a little bit like this. Somehow moving your mouth helps a little bit. But there's a few things you'll figure out in your body that will help you have longer retention periods. That being said, the point of this isn't to retain your breath for as long as possible. That's not really the point of this whole thing. And there's many reasons why this breathing technique is beneficial, but it really isn't about it being a competitive thing, going, well, I can retain breath for X amount of minutes and it's really not about that. So what's really important is what's actually happening in your mind and body when you go from this deep breathing place into the breath retention. Firstly, the fact that you're doing it is important because it's not immediately comfortable, and part of the broader Wim Hof approach is you voluntarily putting your body under some sort of strain. Although once you get into it, it's not too much strain, but you're opting into adversity. It's like going into the cold. And what that does is it pulls you into a deeper part of yourself. So what happens when you transition from the deep breathing in and out into the breath retention, there's all sorts of things that are also happening physiologically. And we can go into that some other time. If you want, you can research on that. There's a lot of research that has been done with Wim Hof and multiple other people to just demonstrate what's actually happening when you do this. Apart from that, there's your kind of subjective internal experience. It can have a meditative effect. It can feel quite trippy, but in a good way. Yeah, so there's a lot more to this than just retaining your breath. It is pretty cool to see how long you can retain your breath after doing this for a very short time. You probably within the first 1 or 2 times of trying it would notice that you can retain your breath much longer than you've ever been able to before, and that's always cool to see. So that's the end of this tutorial. Make this your own journey and process of self-discovery. There's going to be subtleties and nuances that are specific to you in terms of getting into this practice. And the most important thing is to approach it with a sense of empathy and self-compassion and non-judgment, but also with intent. And I guarantee you it's going to make an impact in your life. And hopefully one day we can do it together and go for a swim together, and we can broaden this community of, discovering ourselves and who we are in this world, and the deeper parts of ourselves that is always there, waiting for us to become aware of it. So have a wonderful day, and we'll chat real soon. And yeah, goodbye. Woo!